Have you ever been judged just by how you look? Have you ever felt invisible in a place where everyone else sparkled, except you? This is the story of a woman who walked into a jewelry store, looking for hope, and walked out with humiliation. But life had other plans for her, plans that would leave everyone stunned. The rain had been relentless that morning, soaking the sidewalks of Manhattan in a dull gray sheen. Amelia Carter clutched her tattered coat tighter around her slender frame as she hurried down Fifth Avenue. Her shoes, scuffed, soaked, and falling apart, squished with each step. She had meant to stop in front of the store, but something pulled her gaze toward the window display. Gold, silver, emeralds, diamonds. The glittering jewels sparkled under the soft lighting inside. She stood there, her breath fogging up the glass, eyes wide not with desire, but with memories. Her mother had loved rubies, always said they held stories of old, buried deep in every red shimmer. Amelia hadn't worn jewelry in years. Life had taught her survival was more urgent than adornment. She took a hesitant step forward and pushed open the ornate door of the boutique. It was called Sable & Sons, a luxury establishment known more for turning away the unworthy than for selling actual gems. The moment she stepped inside, warmth greeted her, but not from the staff. The velvet-lined interiors, the scent of expensive perfume, the soft classical music, it all screamed exclusivity. But Amelia didn't belong. Drenched, breathless, and trembling, she wandered closer to a glass case showcasing a delicate sapphire necklace. Her eyes didn't flicker with want. They shone with quiet remembrance. A sharp voice sliced through the air. "Miss, may I help you?" Amelia turned. The manager, Ms. Lorraine Hawthorne, stood stiffly in stilettos, her eyes narrowed. She took one look at Amelia's wet clothes, stringy hair, and muddy shoes, and her lip curled. I was just looking," Amelia said softly. "We do not allow loitering. These are high-value items." Her words weren't kind. They were laced with disdain, delivered in front of the two other sales associates and a pair of well-dressed customers, one of whom snickered behind a manicured hand. Amelia flushed. "I'm not here to steal anything. Ma'am, I think it's best you leave." For a moment, silence held. Even the music seemed to pause. Amelia looked down at her shoes, then back at the necklace. She swallowed the humiliation, her throat aching. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Lorraine stepped forward. "Out. Now." And Amelia left. Back into the rain, back into the world where no one knew her name. Her tears blended with the rain as she walked toward the bus stop, wondering why kindness had become such a rare gem in places that were filled with treasure. That night, Amelia sat in her small, one-bedroom apartment, furnished with second-hand finds and silent stories. She placed her cracked phone on the table and opened an email. She had received the message 2 weeks ago but hadn't dared to believe it. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled again. "Dear Ms. Carter, we are pleased to inform you that the estate of Mr. Edward Langley has been officially settled. As the sole heir, you are now entitled to his assets and holdings, which include but are not limited to Langley Investments, 72% shareholding. For properties, including Manhattan Penthouse and Florida Estate. Cash reserves totaling $8.6 million USD. Kindly reach out to schedule your in-person visit for asset transfer and signature." Her breath caught. She hadn't told anyone, not even her old coworker from the diner. She didn't know how to process it yet. The man she thought had long forgotten her, her biological father, had passed away in his sleep last month. She hadn't seen him since she was 5. She never knew he'd looked for her until now. And yet, that didn't change the way she'd been treated today. Not one bit. She opened her bag, pulled out a small leather notebook, and scribbled one sentence on the last page. "Tomorrow I buy the..." The next morning, as the sunlight filtered through sheer curtains and danced across the soft ivory walls of a modest downtown apartment, Elise sat on her small couch with a chipped mug of tea. Her thoughts were a tangle of shame and defiance. The events at the jewelry store played like a cruel film on repeat in her mind. The smug look of the manager, the quiet stares of the bystanders, the ache in her chest as she walked away trying to preserve what little dignity she had left. What they didn't know, what she didn't fully know, was that Elise Sinclair wasn't just a struggling woman with calloused hands and second-hand clothes. She was the heir to a forgotten legacy. Elise had grown up in the foster system. Her only clue to her origin was a gold pendant with the letter S inscribed on the back and a faded letter from a woman named Lorraine Sinclair, who claimed to be her grandmother. Elise had never known what became of Lorraine. The letter was old, creased, and unreadable in parts, but she had always kept it tucked away safely. But the humiliation at the jewelry store awakened something fierce in her. That morning, Elise retrieved the pendant from the velvet pouch hidden in her closet and ran her fingers over the worn surface. She decided it was time to find out where she came from and why she had been left behind the store. The next morning, as the sunlight filtered through sheer curtains and danced across the soft ivory walls of a modest downtown apartment, Elise sat on her small couch with a chipped mug of tea. Her thoughts were a tangle of shame and defiance. The events at the jewelry store played like a cruel film on repeat in her mind. The smug look of the manager, the quiet stares of the bystanders, the ache in her chest as she walked away trying to preserve what little dignity she had left. What they didn't know, what she didn't fully know, was that Elise Sinclair wasn't just a struggling woman with calloused hands and second-hand clothes. She was the heir to a forgotten legacy. Elise had grown up in the foster system. Her only clue to her origin was a gold pendant with the letter S inscribed on the back and a faded letter from a woman named Lorraine Sinclair, who claimed to be her grandmother. Elise had never known what became of Lorraine. The letter was old, creased, and unreadable in parts, but she had always kept it tucked away safely. But the humiliation at the jewelry store awakened something fierce in her. That morning, Elise retrieved the pendant from the velvet pouch hidden in her closet and ran her fingers over the worn surface. She decided it was time to find out where she came from and why she had been left behind. Unbeknownst to Elise, halfway across the city, a legal firm was in chaos. A file that had been buried for years was finally flagged, thanks to an alert from a young intern doing a digital archiving project. The file belonged to Lorraine Sinclair, a once famous jewelry heiress who had mysteriously vanished 2 decades ago. The letter she had written to her only grandchild, Elise, had been part of a last effort to pass on her legacy. But the system had failed. Until now. That very afternoon, Elise received a call she almost didn't answer. The number was unfamiliar, and she'd been dodging debt collectors for months. But when she finally picked up, the voice on the other end was calm, professional, and shocking. "Miss Elise Sinclair?" the woman asked. "My name is Cora Winslow. I'm an attorney for Sinclair Holdings. I believe we need to talk. It's regarding your inheritance." Elise almost dropped the phone. The office was sleek and modern, nothing like the government buildings Elise was used to when applying for assistance or looking for jobs. Cora Winslow greeted her warmly, with a smile that felt genuine. "Elise," she said gently, "your grandmother Lorraine passed away 10 years ago. She left behind a considerable estate, and you're the only living heir." I don't understand," Elise stammered. "She left me a letter, but I thought there were errors in processing. Documents got buried. You were never found. Until now." Cora handed her a thick folder. Inside were deeds, trust details, and pictures of Lorraine. One photograph made Elise's breath hitch. Lorraine standing in front of Sinclair and Sons Jewelry, the very store that had thrown her out yesterday. Elise's eyes widened. She owned that store? Founded it, Cora corrected. But after her disappearance, and following the mismanagement of those who took over, it became disconnected from her legacy. Elise sat in stunned silence. Her hands trembled as she flipped through papers confirming the truth she never expected. She wasn't just a nobody. She was Sinclair blood. And suddenly, everything changed. The next morning, Elise didn't wear designer clothes. She didn't arrive in a flashy car. She walked into Sinclair and Sons Jewelry wearing the same coat from yesterday, the one they had turned their noses up at. This time, the store was quiet. The manager, Mr. Harding, was standing behind the counter, smug as ever, until he noticed her. "You again," he scoffed. Look, lady, I already told you yesterday. I'm not here to shop, Elise interrupted, her voice steady but cold. I'm here to meet the new owner. She's arriving any minute now. Harding frowned. Owner? What are you talking about? Before he could say more, a man in a tailored gray suit stepped inside. He carried a folder and nodded at Elise. Elise Sinclair, he said. I have the final documents here for your signature. The acquisition is complete. Harding paled. Wait, what? Acquisition. Elise looked at him with a small, almost pitying smile. Yes, Mr. Harding. I'm the new owner. As of today, Sinclair and Sons belongs to me. The silence in the store was deafening. Word spread fast. The woman who had been humiliated and kicked out for being too poor was now the rightful owner of one of the city's most prestigious jewelry stores. Journalists reached out. Social media blew up. The irony was too delicious for the world to ignore. But Elise didn't care about the noise. She stood in her grandmother's old office on the second floor, surrounded by her legacy, photos, designs, old sketches Lorraine had drawn by hand. Her eyes welled up. She placed the pendant on the desk and whispered, I found my way back. Mr. Harding was let go, replaced by a young, respectful woman Elise had seen offering tissues to her the day she was thrown out. Kindness mattered more to Elise than power. She began to restore the store's reputation, rebranding it in Lorraine's honor. She launched a new program offering free jewelry-making classes to women from shelters and hired former foster kids who needed a second chance. Because she had once needed one too. Elise's story wasn't just about wealth or revenge. It was about discovering the truth of who you are, even when the world tries to convince you you're worthless. She wasn't just a woman who was once hungry and humiliated. She was a woman who turned her pain into power. And that's what made her unforgettable. The days after Elise reclaimed her grandmother's store were filled with more than just attention. Headlines praised her. Social media hailed her as the real-life Cinderella. But Elise wasn't interested in fame. She was focused on restoring something far more valuable, dignity and dreams, not just hers, but for everyone who had ever been told they weren't enough. Her first decision as the new owner was to change the name of the store from Sinclair and Sons to Lorraine's Grace, a tribute to the woman who had unknowingly guided her all along. The morning of the reopening was crisp and sunny, yet Elise's hands trembled slightly as she stood behind the newly polished counter. Every glass case gleamed with intention, not just luxury. Among the shiny diamonds and gold pieces sat one special necklace, a custom design with a small gold heart and the initials LS. It was the last piece her grandmother had worked on, left unfinished. With the help of a young artisan named Clara, an orphan Elise had hired from a local shelter, they completed it together. Elise had finally filled in the missing piece. The line outside stretched around the block on the first day of the grand reopening. News cameras rolled. But amid all the faces, one stood out, a woman in a worn coat and carrying a child on her hip. Elise saw herself in her. The woman hesitated at the entrance, as if expecting to be turned away. Elise walked over with a smile. Welcome to Lorraine's Grace. Come in. The woman blinked in surprise. I don't have money. I just wanted to look. You're welcome here, Elise replied softly. Everyone is. Inside, the woman's daughter pointed to a small charm bracelet with glittering stars. Elise knelt down and said, That one's a gift, for dreams that sparkle even in the dark. The little girl squealed, and her mother began to cry quietly. That moment reminded Elise why this mattered. She wasn't just changing a business. She was rebuilding a legacy of kindness. But not everyone was happy with Elise's return. In a high-rise across town, Victor Hale, the former executive who had managed Sinclair and Sons after Lorraine's disappearance, slammed his fist on a glass table. How did I miss her? He growled. She was supposed to be out of the picture. Victor had built a reputation on exclusivity, elitism, and profits over people. He had reshaped Sinclair and Sons into a brand for the rich and ruthless, and Elise's new direction threatened everything. I want her gone, he hissed. Find out what she's up to. Find a way to sink her. What Victor didn't know was that Elise had not only inherited the store, but also ownership over several properties and archives Lorraine had kept hidden. Inside one of those archives was a letter, addressed not to Elise, but to Victor, outlining his illegal laundering of money through fake inventory and offshore accounts. Elise hadn't opened it yet, but soon she would. Late one evening, as Elise closed up the shop, she heard the bell above the door chime softly. She turned, surprised. The store had been empty for hours. A man stood there, soaked from the rain. Tall, with intense eyes, and a presence that was hard to ignore. He looked familiar. "I'm sorry we're closed," Elise said, stepping forward. "But if you need something—" "I'm not here to buy jewelry," he interrupted. "I came because I know who you are." Elise tensed. "Excuse me?" The man stepped forward slowly. "My name is Andrew Sinclair." Her breath caught. "I'm Lorraine's grandson," he said quietly. "Your cousin?" The revelation shook Elise to her core. Could it be true? Was there more family she had never known? Andrew held out a photograph of Lorraine holding two infants in her arms. One was Elise. The other, him. "I've been looking for you," he said. "And I think you need to know the full story about what happened to Lorraine and who really wanted her gone." As Elise stared into his eyes, something stirred inside her. A mixture of hope, fear, and the quiet certainty that her story had only just begun. There were more secrets to uncover, more truth to face, and the past was finally catching up. Rain pattered softly on the windows of Lorraine's Grace, but inside, the air had turned electric. Elise sat across from Andrew Sinclair, her eyes fixed on the photograph he had brought. It was faded, aged by time, but undeniable. Two babies. One in a pink blanket, the other in blue. Lorraine cradled them both, her eyes full of love and sorrow. How is this possible?" Elise whispered, gripping the frame with trembling hands. Andrew looked down, his jaw tightening. "She was forced to separate us. My father, her son, wanted nothing to do with her anymore. He resented her independence, her kindness. He married into money, and that world demanded she be left behind. You were left at a shelter after your parents died. No one told me. No one told her, either, until it was too late." Elise's heart ached with grief and anger. "So all this time, I had a family?" Andrew nodded. "And someone didn't want you to find out." Elise showed Andrew the letter she had found in her grandmother's private archive, sealed and yellowed, with Victor Hale's name on it. When Andrew read it, his expression hardened. This is everything. Proof of what he did. The stolen assets, the fake inventory, even the offshore accounts. This is why Lorraine vanished. Victor forced her out. But why didn't she fight back? Elise asked, her voice cracking. "She tried," Andrew said. "But no one listened. No one cared. So she hid what she could and waited for the right person to find the truth." Elise looked down at the letter. "Then let's give her the justice she never had." Over the next few days, Elise and Andrew began gathering evidence. Financial reports, testimonies from former employees, forged documents buried in storage rooms. The web Victor had spun was intricate but flawed. But Victor was no fool. He sensed the danger and acted swiftly. He sent his lawyers. He sent private investigators. He even sent a warning, a single diamond placed on Elise's desk with a note. "You're making a mistake." But Elise didn't waver. Not anymore. She had spent her life thinking she was nobody. Now she knew better. One morning, as Elise prepared for a press conference to expose Victor's crimes, a familiar face walked into her store. Diana, the saleswoman who had thrown her out the first day she visited. "I heard you were in trouble," Diana said nervously. "And I have something you need." She handed Elise a USB drive. "What is this?" Elise asked, wary. "Security footage," Diana replied. "From the back room. It shows Victor's assistant forging documents. I copied it before I left. I couldn't stay in that place after what happened to you." Elise stared at her. "Why are you helping me?" Diana sighed. "Because no one ever helped me. And I saw who you really
Are that day.
You didn't deserve what happened. The press conference was packed. Reporters buzzed with curiosity. Elise stood at the podium, nerves coiling in her stomach like a tight spring. But when she looked at Andrew in the front row and at the photo of Lorraine beside her, her courage returned. I was once thrown out of this store for looking poor, she began. But what they didn't know was that I was born of this place. That the woman who founded it, Lorraine Sinclair, was my grandmother. Gasps rippled through the crowd. And this store was stolen from her. Today, I'm here not just as her heir, but as her voice. Elise then revealed everything, the documents, the videos, the letter. She named Victor Hale and laid bare his crimes for the world to see. Victor, watching from his penthouse, turned pale. Within days, the scandal exploded. Authorities launched an investigation. Victor Hale was arrested, his empire collapsing under the weight of his own greed. His assets were frozen, and his name dragged through headlines worldwide. Meanwhile, Elise and Andrew were flooded with support. Lorraine's Grace became more than a jewelry store. It became a sanctuary, a symbol of second chances and hidden strength. Elise used her fortune to fund scholarships for underprivileged girls, shelters for women, and art programs in schools. The store even began a tradition. Every year on Lorraine's birthday, a free piece of handcrafted jewelry was gifted to someone in need. One evening, after closing up the store, Elise sat under the twinkling lights, sipping tea. Andrew joined her, holding 2 pastries from the bakery down the street. "You've changed everything," he said softly. "You brought her legacy back." "We did it together," she replied. Their eyes met. A warmth passed between them. Not just familial, but something gentler, deeper. Though they were not siblings, they had become something else entirely. 2 broken hearts mended by shared truth. As Elise smiled, a soft breeze rustled through the doorway, and for a moment, it felt like Lorraine was there too, watching over them with pride. Elise had gone from being discarded, doubted, and dismissed to becoming the woman her grandmother always knew she could be. But the story wasn't over yet, because even as justice was served, one last mystery remained. In Lorraine's private journal, found in the bottom drawer, was a cryptic line. "One more heir, lost to time. If you find her, you'll complete the story." Elise stared at the line for a long time. Another heir?
Who was she?
And where was she now? The truth would lead Elise on one final journey, one that would change everything she thought she knew again. The city was beginning to bloom again, hints of spring rising from the cracked sidewalks and icy roads. Inside Lorraine's Grace, Elise sat with her fingers tracing the final page of her grandmother's journal, the mysterious line echoing over and over in her mind. "One more heir, lost to time. If you find her, you'll complete the story." It had been 2 months since Victor Hale was arrested and the truth of Lorraine's stolen legacy restored. Elise had thought the past was finally put to rest. But Lorraine's words, they pulled at her like a whisper through the walls. And Elise wasn't the type to leave whispers unanswered. With Andrew's help, Elise dug into Lorraine's past. Every diary, every letter, every photo was reviewed again. They revisited the shelter Elise had grown up in and tracked old employees, social workers, and even distant friends of a Sinclair family. That's when they found her name. A baby girl Lorraine had mentioned in a letter to a friend. A twin sister to Elise, placed in a different shelter during the chaos of their parents' death. She had disappeared from the system at age 7, adopted by a family across the country, then abandoned again at 16. No further records. No known address. Just one haunting clue, a hand-drawn butterfly logo scribbled on a worn-out piece of paper found in Lorraine's desk, next to the name Hope. Elise had seen that butterfly before. The butterfly was the symbol of a nonprofit jewelry school for underprivileged young women in Philadelphia, the Monarch Workshop. Elise remembered donating to it anonymously, impressed by its work. She reached out, requesting to visit. The director hesitated, but eventually agreed. When Elise walked into the modest studio filled with stones, sketches, and shimmering pieces of art, something inside her stirred. She didn't know exactly why until she saw the girl working in the back corner. Her eyes, her hands, her focus. The mirror image of Elise. Elise stepped closer, heart thudding.
"Hi," she said gently.
"I'm Elise." The girl looked up, surprised.
"Hope," she replied.
And just like that, the final piece clicked into place. At first, Hope didn't believe her.
"Who would?"
A stranger claiming to be your long-lost sister? A millionaire offering answers to a life full of questions? But when Elise showed her the baby photos, the letters, the journals, something broke inside Hope. Tears streamed down her face. "I thought I was just forgotten," she whispered. "Like I never mattered." Elise pulled her into a hug. "You were never forgotten. You were just lost. But I've found you now." It was the moment Lorraine must have dreamed of, her granddaughters, together again, united not by wealth, but by the roots they never knew they shared. Hope moved back to the city with Elise, cautiously at first, still unsure of her place. But the warmth she felt from Andrew, from the staff at the store, and from Elise herself, slowly replaced the cold years of abandonment. Elise gave Hope a special corner in Lorraine's Grace, a studio to design and create jewelry under her own name. The pieces she crafted told her story: survival, pain, beauty. Customers couldn't stop talking about the butterfly line, a tribute to the symbol that led Elise to her. Together, the sisters transformed the store into something new, not just a place of beauty, but a place of healing. A year later, something magical happened. Under a soft spring sky, beneath cascading white flowers in the courtyard of Lorraine's mansion, Elise married David, the kind artist she had met during her early days in the city, who had stood by her through every twist and truth. Hope walked her down the aisle, clutching Elise's hand with trembling pride. Andrew officiated, his voice cracking as he pronounced them husband and wife. In the audience sat dozens of people who had once felt invisible: women from shelters, orphans turned artists, survivors turned sisters. Elise looked out at them, tears in her eyes. Her heart was finally whole. Lorraine's Grace became a national symbol of redemption and rebirth. Elise and Hope launched a foundation under their grandmother's name, supporting abused women, abandoned children, and young artists with lost voices. A plaque stood near the entrance of a store. It read, "To the woman who lost everything, but left behind love, strength, and two hearts to carry it forward." Every year on Lorraine's birthday, Elise and Hope would sit on the rooftop of the mansion, looking out over the city, cups of tea in hand. "She'd be proud of you," Hope would whisper. "She'd be proud of us," Elise would reply. And somewhere, in the quiet wind that rustled the roses, they could almost hear Lorraine smiling. Never measure someone's worth by the way they look or how they enter your life. Sometimes, the poorest stranger holds the richest story, and sometimes, the one you cast out returns to own the very world that rejected her.